What did people do before air conditioning took over every home? That is not a small question, and I will tell you why it matters right now. For most of human history, people kept their homes genuinely cool through summer, and they did it without a single kilowatt of electricity devoted to it. Then we got central air, and we forgot everything they knew. I have spent years paying attention to the old methods, testing them, watching what holds up and what is just romantic nonsense. And I will tell you honestly, the old ways work better than most people expect, and some of them work better than the gadgets people are buying today. Before I get into the methods themselves, I want to point you to something. We put together an in-depth guide that goes further on this topic than I can in one video. If you want the fuller breakdown, the deeper detail, the material that takes longer to explain than a video allows, open the camera app on your phone right now, point it at the QR code sitting in the top right corner of the screen, and scan it. That QR code stays pinned there for the rest of the video, so you can grab it any time while we keep going. No need to pause now. Let's keep moving. Here is what I want to push back on first. Folks are often told that a box fan in the window is just as good as professional cooling strategies. That is not quite true, and folks are told that planting a tree helps cool a home but takes so long it is not worth thinking about. Also not quite right. The right placement of the right shade creates measurable cooling benefits within just a few seasons. There is a lot of incomplete advice floating around on this topic, and some of it quietly makes things worse. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which natural cooling strategies actually move the needle, how to layer them together so they work as a system, and what to skip because it is more effort than it is worth. I am going to walk you through the principles the way careful folks used to understand them, as a connected system, not a bag of tricks. Let's start with the single most powerful tool in natural cooling, and it costs nothing. Method 1 is cross-ventilation using the stack effect. This is the foundation that everything else builds on. Hot air rises. That is not a folk saying, it is basic physics. A house that is designed or managed to take advantage of that fact will shed heat naturally all day long. The idea is this: open low windows on the shaded, cooler side of your house. Open high windows or vents, including attic vents or upper floor windows, on the opposite side. Air moves in low, picks up heat as it crosses the living space, and exits high. That movement keeps the indoor temperature closer to the outdoor air temperature rather than letting heat accumulate. Most people do this backwards. They open every window equally, which creates no pressure difference and no real airflow. What you want is a deliberate path. Cool air enters, warm air exits. Even a modest cross breeze, if it is directed properly, can make a room feel 5 to 8 degrees cooler than still air at the same temperature. That is real, noticeable comfort. Method 2 is window management by time of day. This one sounds simple, and it is, but I have watched folks get it wrong for years and wonder why their house heats up despite their open windows. The rule is this: open in the cool, close before the heat arrives. In most of the continental United States and Western Europe, outdoor temperatures peak in the mid-afternoon, often between 2 and 5 in the afternoon. By that time, if you are still running air through open windows, you are pumping hot air in. The old practice was to open windows wide during the night and the early morning hours, sometimes as early as 4 or 5 in the morning, to flush the house with cool air. Then, before the outdoor temperature climbs past your indoor temperature, you close everything up. Shutters, curtains, windows, all of it. You are essentially trapping the cool air inside and using the thermal mass of your walls, floors, and furniture to hold that coolness through the hot part of the day. I will come back to thermal mass in a moment because it connects to something I think is the most underrated strategy on this list. Hold that thought. Method 3 is exterior shading, and I want you to think about this one as a long-term investment in your home's comfort. The sun hitting your roof and south and west-facing walls is the primary reason your house gets hot. Shade those surfaces, and you stop the problem at the source. Window awnings, extended roof overhangs, pergolas draped with climbing vines, and well-placed deciduous trees all do the same job. A south-facing window with a properly designed overhang, roughly as deep as the window is tall, blocks the high summer sun while letting the low winter sun warm the room. This is not a new idea. It is how homes were designed for centuries before we outsourced comfort to mechanical systems. If you are planting trees, the western exposure is often the most important. Late afternoon sun comes in low and hard, and a mature shade tree on the west side of a house can reduce that wall's heat load dramatically. You will not see the full benefit in year one, but within 3 to 5 years you will feel the difference. That is a shorter timeline than most people realize, and the tree keeps working every summer after that without any operating cost. Method 4 is reflective and radiant strategies for your roof and attic. Your attic can reach temperatures far higher than the outdoor air on a hot day. Some estimates put it well above 130 degrees in some climates. That heat radiates downward into your living space all afternoon and into the evening. Radiant barriers, thin reflective sheeting installed on the underside of your roof rafters, reflect that radiant heat back upward, rather than letting it pour into the house below. This is not a new product. The principle has been used in various forms for a long time. It is relatively inexpensive to install in an accessible attic, and its effect on afternoon comfort is real. Alongside that, make sure your attic is properly ventilated. Soffit vents at the eave and ridge vents at the peak allow the stack effect to work in the attic the same way it works in your living space, drawing cooler air in at the bottom and pushing hot air out at the top. A vented, shaded attic is a fundamentally cooler house. If you want to go deeper on how all of these strategies layer together, which combinations give you the most return for the least effort, that is exactly what the guide is for. Open your camera app, point it at that QR code still sitting in the top right corner, and scan it. The guide covers the fuller picture in a way this video can only begin to touch. Method 5 is thermal mass, and this is the one I promised you earlier. Thermal mass is the ability of heavy, dense materials, stone, brick, concrete, tile, even water, to absorb heat slowly and release it slowly. It is why an old stone farmhouse stays cool in summer, even without any active cooling. The mass absorbs heat during the day without getting hot fast, and if you flush it with cool night air using the window strategy we talked about, it resets every night. If you have a modern frame house, you have less natural thermal mass than an older masonry structure, but you can add it. A stone or tile floor on the ground level, a masonry fireplace surround, even large containers of water placed in the interior of the house, all add thermal mass. The key is keeping that mass in the interior of the home, away from direct sun, so it absorbs room heat rather than solar heat. Method 6 is evaporative cooling, and I want to be honest with you about where it works and where it does not. Evaporative cooling is the principle behind a wet cloth on your neck, a clay pot full of water, and the old practice of hanging damp curtains in doorways. As water evaporates, it absorbs heat from the surrounding air. In a dry climate, this effect is significant. In a hot, humid climate like the southeastern United States, it is much less effective because humid air is already carrying a lot of moisture and cannot absorb much more. For folks in drier climates, the Southwest, the Great Plains, parts of the Mediterranean, a simple swamp cooler or even a bowl of ice water placed in front of a fan can drop the perceived temperature in a room by a meaningful amount. It is not a whole house solution in most cases, but as a targeted strategy for one room or one person, it has been used effectively for generations. In humid climates, focus your energy on the other methods we have covered and skip this one. Method 7 is nighttime flushing, and it ties back to everything we have discussed. I think of this as the engine that drives the whole system. Every night that outdoor temperatures drop below your indoor temperature, which in most climates happens at least from late evening through early morning, is an opportunity to cool the thermal mass of your home. The more aggressively you can move air through the house during those cooler hours, the lower your baseline temperature will be when the heat of the following day arrives. A whole house fan, mounted in the ceiling and vented to the attic, can move an enormous volume of air through a house in a short time. These are different from attic fans. A whole house fan pulls air in through open lower floor windows and pushes it out through the attic. Running it for an hour or two in the evening and again in the early morning can flush several complete air changes through your home, pulling stored heat out of the walls, floors, and furnishings. They are significantly less expensive to operate than central air conditioning, and in many climates, they handle most of the cooling load all by themselves. Method 8 is managing internal heat sources, and this one is often overlooked. Your kitchen, your lighting, your appliances, they all generate heat inside the house. An oven running during the hottest part of the day can raise indoor temperatures noticeably. Old practice was to cook in the early morning or late evening during summer, letting the residual heat dissipate with the night air. Outdoor cooking was not just a pleasant tradition, it was a practical way to keep the kitchen cool. Switch to LED lighting if you have not already. Incandescent bulbs are little space heaters. Run your dishwasher and dryer in the evening. These are small changes, but they add up across a long, hot day. The old-timers were not doing this consciously as an energy strategy. They were just managing their household by the heat of the day the way everyone understood you had to. Method 9 is cool zones and room isolation. Here is a strategy that carries a lot of practical weight for folks who are spending most of their time in one or two rooms. You do not need to cool the whole house. You need to cool where you live. Close off rooms that are not in use. Keep interior doors shut to isolate the coolest areas. A north-facing room with thick curtains and a stone or tile floor is naturally cooler than the rest of the house on a hot day. Making that room your primary living space during the hottest hours is simply the smart thing to do. Before central air, families did exactly this. The parlor on the north side, the covered porch facing east, the cellar or basement, these were the cool retreats. I have talked to older folks who remember their grandparents moving the whole household rhythm around the sun and the shade, and they talk about it without any sense of deprivation. It was just how summer worked. If you are putting this all together and wondering how to sequence the steps, which ones to tackle first, which investments give you the best return before you spend $1, that is the conversation we go deeper on in the guide. Your phone's camera app, the QR code in the top right corner of the screen, scan it, and you can keep that fuller breakdown close. Method 10 is landscaping and exterior air management. This is the long game, and it is worth planting the idea even if you take action slowly. Ground cover plants, shrubs, and grass reduce the amount of heat radiating up from the ground around your house. A bare gravel or concrete surface on a hot day radiates heat back up at you and into your walls. Grass and low plantings stay significantly cooler. If you have a paved area right outside south or west-facing windows, that pavement is adding to your heat load every single afternoon. Water features, even a modest garden pond, contribute to evaporative cooling of the air immediately around them. This is not magic, but it is measurable. The air 10 feet from a small pond is cooler and more comfortable than the air 10 feet from a concrete patio on the same hot afternoon. Take a moment right now, if you are part of our community here, and hit subscribe. We talk through exactly these kinds of practical, time-tested topics every week, and I answer questions in the comments. If you have something specific you are trying to figure out about your home, drop it below. I read every one. Now, I want to address one last thing before I close, because I think it matters. There is a version of natural cooling advice that gets oversimplified into a few cute tips. Close your blinds, run a fan. That is not wrong, but it leaves out the most important idea. These strategies work as a system. Cross-ventilation, thermal mass, exterior shading, and nighttime flushing are not four separate things you pick one from. They reinforce each other. A house that has good exterior shading will cool down faster at night with less effort. A house with good thermal mass will hold the benefit of nighttime flushing longer into the following day. The methods stack. This week, I would encourage you to do two things. First, map your house. Walk around it at 2 in the afternoon and notice which walls are in full sun. Notice which windows face the shaded side. Think about the path air would naturally take if you opened certain windows and closed others. You are building a mental model of your house as a thermal system, and that model is worth having. Second, try the window timing strategy for just a few days. Open wide before sunrise, close everything before the outdoor temperature climbs past your indoor temperature, and see what your indoor temperature looks like at 4 in the afternoon. You may be surprised. This month, look at your west-facing windows and consider whether a simple awning or exterior shade would be practical. Look at your attic access and see what you are working with up there. These are not large investments. They are the kind of careful, deliberate improvements that pay back quietly every summer for decades. There is no great profit in teaching folks the simple thing that actually works. The old cooling methods cost almost nothing to implement once you understand them, and they do not need a service contract or a replacement filter. That is exactly why they got pushed aside. But they are still here, they still work, and now you know how to put them to use. Before I sign off, everything we covered today, the way these strategies layer together, the fuller detail on getting more from each one, open the camera app on your phone, point it at that QR code in the top right corner of the screen, and scan it to get the guide. It is the deeper resource for when you are ready to go beyond what this video can cover, and I think you will find it genuinely useful. I would love to know, do you remember a grandparent or neighbor who had a trick for keeping their home cool in summer? A habit? A setup? Something they just always did? Leave it in the comments. Those practical memories are worth keeping alive, and I genuinely learn from what you share down there. Our next video takes this conversation into a connected place. How to winterize your home using the same common sense principles so that your heating costs follow the same direction as your cooling costs. Down. If this kind of practical, no-nonsense homesteading knowledge is what you are looking for, we would be glad to have you here. Hit subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.